It's the Redbird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans? He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome in. It is the Redbird Reboot podcast. We got your two hosts here, Blake Murphy and Marcos Labrada. We're here to talk about a Cardinals team that has unfortunately now fallen after a 2-0 start to 2-4 with a loss on the road to the Indianapolis Colts. We did see Jacoby Brissett play pretty well overall in relief of Kyler Murray. Daniel Jones threw for 2 touchdowns. Cardinals had a chance to win the game at the end, and the ball was incomplete on 4th down. There was some contact with Trey McBride. Ultimately, no call. Ball probably was a little bit uncatchable, but it's enough of an area where you can feel like you kind of got robbed. But at the end of the day, Marcos, we're here talking yet again about a Cardinals offense that actually is able to step up a little bit, but isn't able to get a touchdown when they need to. They kick a field goal, only 3 points in the fourth quarter. Indianapolis Colts score 14 points in the fourth quarter. And once again, this fourth quarter defense simply cannot keep a lead intact. Arizona Cardinals now fall, as we said, to 2-4 on the season, their 4th game straight. It just feels kind of like the slide has turned into a full-on slump for this team, Marcos.
Yeah, it definitely did. So, yeah, sorry about that. So, the issue that I had with this game was that at the very end, I know that it was supposed to be nothing but passing, like on 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th down and whatnot. And instead of trying to run the ball to like bleed out the clock and stuff, they decided, hey, we're just going to try to throw. I think that was having to do more so about the fact that they knew Jacoby Brissett was going to be very aggressive, that he was going to, try to, go for the 1st down, even if it's a 3rd and 16 or 3rd and 12. So in that circumstance, I think that the play calling was just kind of changed over because they knew they had somebody that was willing to try to push the ball deep and whatnot. But I still don't agree with what happened. With this game, it could have been ours if they decided just to try to run the ball. And who knows how many yards you get. But even if you get 3 yards a clip, you put yourself in a 3rd and manageable or 4th and manageable to be able to convert on that. So aside from that, that is the only issue that I had, of course, with this past game. But other than that, I mean, it was a very exciting game, except for the defense.
Yeah, it's unique. Let's go and we can break down a little bit of just some of the last plays that we were able to see here, because that is one of the things I want to make sure that when we're going over, talking a little bit about what we're able to see with the way that the game script went. Let's take a look here as I will go ahead and we will share our screen here with that. We've got Michael Carter taking a run here for about 9 yards on this play. This is part of Jacoby, completed 27 of 44. He's never been more than like a 60% completion guy. But this is the spot where you kind of felt like the Cardinals needed a touchdown. The next play is the one where it feels like that they had a chance. This is part of the Michael Carter run, 9 yards. Like we said, the Cardinals were running the ball pretty well on the ground against the Colts. They're in more of an obvious passing situation, but you get to see a little bit there of getting Froholt downfield, a little bit of their bread and butter counter. Colts were missing their number 1 corner, Charvarius Ward. He was out with concussion in pregame. They were down quite a few corners. This was the spot where it felt like the Cardinals were going to win the game. This is where you watch the diagram from Michael Wilson right there at the bottom of the screen. Jacoby makes a little signal because he sees, hey, look, you got a linebacker here. You got a safety. It's a single high safety, so you know that a deep shot is going to be coming. He takes the snap, and outside of the slot, you get to see this is Michael Wilson route all the way. Just throws it to the outside back shoulder. In this spot, you're like, Cardinals need a touchdown. They're within the 12-yard line. All you got to do, at least, is be able to say, can you punch the ball in? Can you throw the ball in? We'll take a look at the play calling selection, Marcos, because I wasn't as mad about it as I thought I would be when you take a look at how things went down. I think that obviously, like you said, you should have probably run the ball on first down just to be able to um, get that set up. But the way that they at least did it with a small check down to Greg Dortch on first down wasn't too bad, ultimately. Let's get that player. So bright side, at least here, pretty sunny for the most part. What you
Yeah.
want to watch at least is Zay Jones in the back corner of the end zone and then look at where the route's going. This is a design for McBride and Wilson. You can see right here, you kind of have Michael Wilson gets a little bit locked up. You got two guys in between. My idea is that this is supposed to go to Trey McBride right over on the middle of the field. You got a linebacker waiting in space right there. So Jacoby just goes and quickly takes the check down. The way this play is designed, he probably didn't see within the sunlight, but take a look over on this side of the field where Zay Jones ends up. So Zay Jones actually gets a pretty decent release. All you got to do is throw it to the outside shoulder, but this isn't designed for him. They get a quick completion to Dortch, and it really is going to take time down the clock. He's in bounds as far as for where he's tackled. I don't have too much of an issue with that. I think that maybe, yes, you could have run the ball on first down, picked up 5 or 6 yards, gotten closer to that 2-yard line, because you can still get a first down. You want to make sure that the Colts are burning down their clock. If you can run for 3 yards a carry, which is probably what the biggest complaint was, you're going to be in a solid situation. So they pick up 3 yards in first down. Here on second down is kind of where things went a little bit awry here. So they drop back, and you can see at least, again, going toward Trey McBride, going toward your star. Jacoby ends up just kind of throwing a leather pass in the middle of the field. It potentially seems like it gets tipped at the line. We'll take a look here on this play. It just seems like the play was just not going to function, at least for the most part. So he's paused here on that spot. He's going to go ahead.
Got that wide open chasm right there.
Yeah.
So,
he doesn't take off because this isn't a Kyler Murray sort of a run, but it does seem like the ball just came out a little bit funky for whatever reason. Like it looks like it gets tipped there by 51 is what it looks like, at least, as far as with the edge rusher. But it just comes out a little bit wacky. You probably would have picked up, if not a couple of plays there. So now you're at third down. You can run the ball on this down if you want to, but the Cardinals at this point, they don't use any of their timeouts. They go into the end of the game with all 3 timeouts. That's something I think that's
bad.
Yeah,
that's bad clock management.
Not good clock management whatsoever, at least, unfortunately. The Colts, at least, were just ready to be able to go. We've seen these end of game situations when it comes down to the Cardinals have had chances to be able to win the game. They haven't been able to put it away on offense. This is the first time that they were able to essentially get a chance in offense to get the game win. They get the ball back with about 3 to 4 minutes left. This on third down, you see that this is the one where when you're talking about coverage, everyone downfield's covered, just great coverage overall. Someone has to be able to step up and make a play. This is where Kyler would start to scramble, see if things were able to break down. Jacoby kind of takes off a little bit, and he's got some daylight, but he lets up a little bit, seeing one of the linebackers about to run toward him. Probably was going to try to adjust, throw the ball back across his body, see if he could get a play made. Just comes down, and then it sets up fourth down with the game on the line.
Yeah, the whole idea was to try to score and leave them with as little bit of time as you possibly can. So you wanted to take their timeouts, and I heard this on Bootleg Football yesterday that this sunny part of the field, it's very, very hard to track balls because of the fact that you see the ball 1 second or it appears right in front of you right when you're about to catch it. Yep. So they couldn't they had the defense of having the sun like blocking the vision. So they had to work against that as well. And doing that means they took half of the play away. So, yeah, it's just I don't know. I think he just got very overzealous on making sure like passing plays, because most of the time you'll see either like a draw play, which I understand is the kind of the give up play, but it's usually the play that, you can maybe get lucky on. And in this circumstance, he's like, no, I got somebody that's aggressive enough to throw on third down. Screw this. We're going to try to throw and punch it in. And it's like, oh, no, man, like, come on. You should. This is the one time that you probably should have ran the ball like even 3 times in a row.
Right. And that's one of the things where this is clearly spread out because you didn't run the ball on first and second down, especially, is the one I think that hurts the most with that incompletion. You probably should have picked up at least. I had no problem with the check down on first down for 3 yards or so, take some time off the clock. It's that second down pass play with Drew Petzing, with Jacoby Brissett, that really was kind of the issue. This, of course, is now the fourth down play, infamously. pretty much the entire play is very well crafted, I'll say, at least, because it spreads everyone out. You've got two guys over for each spot. You are obviously targeting Trey McBride. You can take a look at least with how they run their defense as far as for with that shell. You can tell that with the corner and how it's lined up with the 1-2-3, it looks like it's going to be man coverage, which means that you can just run Trey McBride. And once you run these guys up on their in routes, you flip him back to the out. So it's kind of like a scissors route with them crossing on each other to get Trey McBride running away from this safety right here. You can see at least it works out pretty well, but they kind of are able to recognize he runs past two guys. You can say that there's a little bit of contact there, and he's looking for a flag, does not get a flag. I think that it could have warranted a flag, but it's one of those ticky-tacky sort of flags where if he would have gotten it is what my opinion is on it. You'll see a little bit clearer shot of it here. He's running up through there, kind of turns, flips around. There's a little bit of hand action that's over there, at least, or maybe he got held a little bit, and that's something where it feels like he got jobbed. The throw in and of itself, if it's on McBride, though, it probably is going to be one of those places where he does get the flag. So you see Jacoby throws the ball. It's a little bit too high. Just the inaccuracy there ends up being essentially what ruins what would have been a great job for the Arizona Cardinals in being able to draw that flag, be able to continue, probably get the ball at the 1 yard line. You can run the ball in. It's just a little bit too high, unfortunately. And that's what it kind of came down to as we talk about it being a game of inches all the time. Truly is a game of inches, maybe about a foot or so over the head of Trey McBride. And the Cardinals end up giving the ball back to the Colts and drop this for their fourth straight loss.
Yeah, I think it is the fact that it was kind of uncatchable that only made the difference and whatnot. But that guy was draping all over Trey McBride. I think maybe maybe the reasoning behind Jacoby Brissett putting too much force into that ball was that he had to kind of throw a laser to him because of how tight the coverage was going to be, especially when you're in the end zone. You want your velocity to be a lot higher, but I think he just put a little bit way too much velocity. Other than that, though, I really love the aggressiveness. I really love the throws downfield, the third down in like 12, the third down and 13 conversions, just getting it to the playmaker, putting it in the right shoulder, putting it where only his guy can get it. Marvin Harrison Jr., unfortunately, did not like him going up to jump up and grab that ball because it put him in danger, and it basically took him out of the game and whatnot.
Yeah, that's one of the plays that we can be able to review with Marvin Harrison Jr. It was the final play that he was in. He actually was only in I believe it was on that previous play. He had one previous catch in the game. That was his second catch of the day. Let's go ahead here.
Yeah, he was on a mesh row. I think I have it on my Twitter.
Yeah, it was on one of those places where it was ultimately a miss by let me go ahead and get this added to scene here. It was a miss by the Arizona quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, where he threw it a little bit behind. So you can see, at least with Marvin kind of running across, he's running over the side of the field, fade route, lets it up a little bit. If you lead the wide receiver a little bit more as the quarterback, you're fine. He ends up catching the ball, slams his head. So some of it is poor luck because you're talking a little bit about, the time frame coming down on it for that one, not landing on the shoulder, but landing on the back of the head from the tackle. You're able to kind of see where when the ball comes up, he hits it a little bit on the inside of his chest. Marvin has to come back for the ball. And as he's in the process of coming back for the ball, he kind of spins his body backwards and hits his head there on the turf. Unfortunate, at least, that's the way that it went down because he looked like he was in for another special game because he already had the two catches. He was being targeted. Jacoby was throwing the ball downfield. And we got to see at least that he ended up finishing with 320 passing yards, and it was Zay Jones ended up having a pretty special day with, I believe it was 63 yards on the day for the Arizona Cardinals. He led them in receiving. As far as with running the ball, the Cardinals, they had a game plan, I think. They did not run the ball at all. Their leading rusher was Bam Knight with a 3.1 averages at 34 yards. Michael Carter had 9 carries for 34 yards. They had a grand total of 88 yards rushing as a team. The highest average per rush came from Jacoby Brissett on I think it was 2 scrambles, including one 12-yard scramble. That was the longest run the Cardinals had of the day against this Indianapolis Colts defense. Colts were down again, a couple of cornerbacks, so you could throw the ball against them pretty much at will. The question I think at least a lot of people have had is how much of this is a quarterback change that revitalized the Cardinals offense. It's the first time I think that they've had a quarterback who's thrown for 2 touchdowns and 320 yards since 2022. The last time that happened was when Kyler Murray did it. They have had only 2 300-yard games from Kyler Murray. So this is one of those cases where I think it's a both and, Marcos. I think on one hand, you can say this was a case of the Colts not having all their corners in and losing their top cornerback before the game even began in warmups. And at the same time, we can also say that this probably wouldn't have changed the game plan too much as a result of Kyler had been in. But what we did get to see was we got to see a taller quarterback who was able to use play action, was able to drop back from under center, which I know has been remarked about a lot. Jacoby dropped back, I believe it was 17 times from under center. Kyler Murray, he's gone about, I think it was 16 times under center for Jacoby. Kyler's only dropped back 17 times this season from under center, which is kind of wild to think about, but with a shorter quarterback, with how it's lined up with everything under center, it's one of those places where it made a difference. And I think it's part of how Drew Petzing wants to run this offense. They want this to be a run heavy, play action heavy, under center sort of offense. And that's where their passing game seemed to be a little bit more unlocked with Brissett than it did with Kyler Murray. And that's led to a whole bunch of questions. How much of this is poor fit between the coach and the quarterback? How much of it is simply the size of Kyler Murray being a factor? There's been a lot of questions that's popped up, and I've got some of my opinions that are here. Curious to hear some of yours, Marcos.
Well, I saw the under center numbers, and I took obviously notes on under center motion because those are the two big factors for a Shanahan a Kubiak type of system. It's like heavy under center action and a lot of motion and whatnot. And not surprisingly so, the Cardinals were under center more this year with Jacoby Brissett, and they called more motion plays in this one game alone. The numbers were staggering because usually there's some games where Kyler Murray only goes under center 8 times in the entire game, and the motion has come up, quite a bit. But the type of motion we're talking about, and this kind of applies to Jacoby Brissett, I guess you can say as well, is just like the short motions by the wide receiver. See the quarterback just wave his guy in. They either switch off, like they become the new number one, number two, or they'll do like a fake motion, go out and come back outside. And the reason why especially with Kyler Murray, he doesn't want the play to be changed too much, because at that point, when you switch off the receivers and you give them their new tasks and whatnot, it's like he wants to see what he's facing pre-snap, and that way he can diagnose it post-snap. So for somebody to be able to operate this type of offense where you're going to be under center, everything's closer to you, you turn your back to the defense. Defense always makes their shifts. They always shift from 2 high to 1 high post-snap, just to be able to like try to help confuse like a quarterback and whatnot. And there's a lot of like under center where there weren't typically rollouts. They were just him, faking the handoff, hitting his back foot, maybe getting like 1 or 2 hitches in, and then delivering the ball. So the timing was there more proper. Also, another situation that happens with Jacoby Brissett is that the whole entire field obviously becomes a factor now with Kyler Murray. It doesn't mean he can't attack the middle of the field. The problem with Kyler Murray is he's not always going to have the vision to be able to do that. So that's a little bit of a factor where, Jacoby Brissett's just going to be able to hang in the pocket and throw it downfield. So that unfortunately, like, this is supposed to be a quarterback-friendly, like, offense and whatnot, but you know it yourself as well. I know you're a supporter of Kyler Murray. You want him to succeed and whatnot, so you yourself can say, like, hey, this offense does not fit Kyler Murray, because even with Kyler Murray being in this offense, they still call way less under center, and they still call less motion with him because of the fact that he's a different type of quarterback, or not the prototypical, like, Shanahan type quarterback. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's one of the places where when you're starting to run your West Coast offense and you're dropping back, and one of the comparisons that I've had for it is if you take a look at the Seattle Seahawks a few years ago, before they made the switch to Geno Smith, they had Russell Wilson as their quarterback. And we got to see they had the whole let Russ cook movement. There was going on air raid, throwing it deep. And then something shifted. Teams basically started playing the cover 2 shell defense. He started getting picked off a bit more. They started doing a little bit more of these mush rushes. And it just transformed because he would either take sacks on the plays or have big plays that would explode. And part of the skill set, I think, in a lot of ways, Marcos, is the intermediate middle of the field area where Marvin Harrison Jr. makes a living out of. Those were areas that we didn't see targeted as much, whereas Jacoby Brissett, it felt like the middle of the field was pretty wide open all throughout. That's something at least that is really interesting. One of the things I
I'll
do
say
want.
that
Oh yeah, go for it.
I'll say that you know how we get annoyed about like the secrecy with the quarterbacks and stuff. I think it was actually a smart move for them not to announce who was going to be the quarterback because you
Mm.
know we were in the dark, right? We didn't know. We had an idea like, hey, Kyler Murray's not going to start
Oh,
this game. It's
I
going to
think
be
we kind
Jacoby
of knew
Brissett.
it was going to be Jacoby once we saw Kyler with the
Yeah.
backups in practice. But
So when the Colts were preparing for that game and whatnot, usually they have a different type of game plan when they're like, okay, this is going to be a little bit more staticky, a little bit more in the shotgun and whatnot. And then you see Jacoby Brissett out there, and then you have your corners who are not like you're not your top two corners and whatnot. It completely changed the game plan on them just right on the fly. So I would say that helped, even though we're like, why did they have to act like the CIA?
yeah, I know. I think it's just something with the Cardinals where it's for Jonathan Gannon. It's how he wants to work his team. Let's go a little bit on the defensive side because we've talked a bit about the offense. We've talked a bit about Jacoby. Let's go and break down a little bit of the defense because this is a defense that, like we've said, keeps having issues again and again as far as when it comes to um, just how they have struggled in being able to give up plays. So we take a look here at the way that the defense was on the last play. So here's where we get to see kind of this quarters coverage. Cardinals in this spot do end up bringing a blitz, so they're rushing six, and then they kind of drop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, another six back over here for no gain. That's one of the things that we've been able to at least see. Now, the big area where they ended up getting blown up is not on this play, but on the next play, where there's a huge pass play to Alec Pierce that basically sets up for the Colts to go in to the red zone. I believe that's going to be this pass play here, where they bring Pierce through the backfield, and you can see that he kind of runs a little bit of that wheel route, and then even he stumbles, gets up in the middle of the field, makes a great catch. This overall kind of coverage that you can see is kind of the Cardinals' quarter coverage, rushing four, dropping seven back in coverage. It's one of the things, at least, that we've seen is Cardinals are not able to get they're able to get pressure, but they're not able to get the sack. They're just a little bit too long in the pocket. Credit them as well. They do a quick adjustment here with the defense. They even get a person on in coverage. It's just a little bit too much time for the in-breaking route. Jones makes a great ball who sails over two Cardinals in order to get in here. You can see that it looks like that was Buda Baker just wasn't able to get a break on the ball. That sets them up pretty well. They eventually were able to punch this ball in, Marcos, with Jonathan Taylor at the 1 yard line.
Yeah, I was wondering if they rolled into like cover three like the last second because I saw the safety come down. Usually that's their biggest indicator that they're rolling to cover three. But regardless of what happened was they ran like this wheel slash dig route. I forgot what the actual terminology
Yeah,
was for it.
crazy little. It's basically it's a wheel route out of the backfield, or I think is what it is, at least for that one.
With an in breaking route. So he threw it right where he
Exactly.
knew where his guy was going to be at. That's pretty hard to defend, but still, yeah, that's not the type of stuff you want to be giving up at the end of the game.
No, and this is one of those plays where Zaven Collins on the tackle just can't have these sort of mistakes, at least for the most part. He gets a face mask on tackling Jonathan Taylor, takes what would have been a loss on the play into a 15-yard penalty. You can see there, boom, right there, hits the part of the face mask. That's just something that you have to be able to make sure it's tough, but
That's
just
tiki tack.
it is a little bit because he didn't necessarily pull, but you do get to see the helmet flip for that one. So that's just part of when you're going out to make sure, like a lot of times you want to make sure that there's ways that you can coach the technique as far as for making sure you grab the tackle. It sets up the Colts. The biggest thing is if you hold the Colts here to a field goal, the Colts are going to basically be, they're going to take a lead, but you'll have the chance at least to ultimately tie it. If they get a touchdown, then you're going to need to get a touchdown because it'd be a 4-point lead for the Colts. So it's one of those game situations where your goal, if you're a Cardinals defensive player, hold them out of the end zone. That's what you got to do at least. And what we've seen with this defense now, this is kind of the same sort of drop back. You got rushing 4, dropping 7 back in coverage. They're able to just pick up the first down with Jonathan Taylor and run. The Cardinals are not actually fitting or filling the box. They're letting the Colts kind of run the ball, take some time off the clock. This is kind of the Jonathan Gannon experience we've seen, Marcos, where in late game situations, now again, the Cardinals are going to get the ball back. So it's not like there's like a minute left and the Cardinals need to use their timeouts. But we have seen that they're kind of running a little bit of just straightforward, predictable. They don't even fire Buda Baker, any of their safeties on that play. They just kind of have it be where They're able to let the gaps kind of just open up a little bit. Same sort of thing here. They kind of finally put the two linebackers over there for the most part to be able to read. And look what happens next. They get a tackle in the next play. So it kind of feels like they do the right move, but it's just a play late sometimes is what it feels like. That's just one of the places where it comes down to with the coaching. You can see here on the previous play where they kind of were in a passing situation, the Colts were able to take advantage. This play, a nice tackle by Akeem Davis-Gaither splitting through. This defense is something
really
when they need to get a
run.
spot. Yeah, he has been. And that's where if you're able to run the ball down to where you are at with the Colts and not have to throw it, that's where you need someone to make a play, whether it's turnovers. And it's a lot harder when you're handing the ball off to one of the best running backs, the leading rusher in the NFL, and Jonathan Taylor. It makes things difficult. Here you get another example place where you get a nice little quick short pass. At least it's incomplete to Josh Downs over his head. That's a good spot right there because now all of a sudden you've disrupted a little bit. You've been able to get a play that is kind of getting the Colts a little bit out of rhythm. It should have been a completion, but Jones mailed it in a little bit. This is another spot where the Cardinals actually brought a blitz, brought pressure. Jones got the ball out, and you get the pass breakup with Will Johnson there in coverage. Downs is probably playing through a bit of a concussion, is what it seemed like, or some sort of an injury. From what you know, he did not practice there earlier today. Now you get things split out, pulled back in. This is another quick short pass, at least, with Rabbit Demerson getting injured. Cardinals, again, rushing forward, not really able to bring as much pressure. Jones has plenty of time, at least as far as in the pocket. They get the completion, and they're down right inside at the 1 for 9 yards. That's just one of those spots where ultimately, Marcos, the way the Cardinals want to do their defense, you're going to need to have a better penetrator on the interior, someone who can actually just beat their man quickly and get in there. Calais is your best option for that right now. And you take a look at Calais on this play. He ends up kind of running into the other guy. You kind of do a little bit of it's a little bit slow, at least, as far as doing a little bit of, trying to get the stunt. That's the right word. Trying to get this done with Dante Stills. Just for whatever way it is, being able to get that instantly boom there into the backfield is just something that the Cardinals don't have. It's part of why I think they took a Walter Nolan, first of all, to try to have him be that wrecker in the middle of the field. Here you're still in what would be normally a pretty decent spot, but Jonathan Taylor's just able to get there with the one play. Yep. Keep turning the legs. This is what the Cardinals' running attack has wanted to be, and they just have not been able to get there. They then punch it in, I believe, on the very next play, unless I'm mistaken. And the Cardinals, they get a field goal. Colts get a touchdown. Cardinals only got one field goal, I believe it was, as the only 3 points they had in the fourth quarter. And you can see here just a nice little pitch that just pretty much kept it. You can see that they got caught off guard. Everyone sucked on onto the inside. The person who misreads, it gets his eyes sucked inside right here. Over there is Budda Baker. He runs to get upfield to keep the contained, to run back in, and Mac Wilson's the guy, at least, who's not able to get in there for the tackle. Overall, just shows the advantage of having an offensive coach like Shane Steichen. This is not anything hard or difficult. They just are basically executing consistently. And it led to another loss for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I was trying to see what he was trying to communicate over to his defense, because he was calling out either the fullback in the backfield that was probably going to be the lead blocker, or like basically that this looks like it's going to be a run, and of course you get the little pitch on the speed out, and he was just wide open. There was only one person defending there, and it was Budda Baker, and there's not a lot that he can do. If he was going to make that play, that was going to be a great like Pro Bowl-esque type of play and whatnot. But I think Budda's kind of having like a little bit of like a down year when it comes to being able to like make those special plays and whatnot. But we can't expect them to continuously keep doing that every single year. We need another playmaker to step up and not have to be always like Budda Baker.
Yeah, we've seen at least the one playmaker who's been like that so far has been Will Johnson. He's been ranked as the top cornerback according to Pro Football Focus, which is tremendous. He hasn't played in the full amount of games. We'll have to see how that will factor into his Rookie of the Year nomination. So far, he's been kind of snubbed, I think, compared to the other rookies that we've seen because he hasn't played that full scenario. We got to see how the Cardinals' number 2 receiver is Zay Jones. Marvin Harrison Jr. had the 2 catches for 32 yards, average 16 yards per catch. But this was up for everyone when it came to receiving. You had about 16 yards a catch for Zay Jones. Michael Wilson had 11 yards a catch. Elijah Higgins, 17 yards a catch. Michael Carter even had his 2 catches out of the backfield. It feels like the question, Marcos, that a lot of people have is should Jacoby Brissett get another start? Seems to be coming. Kyler Murray was back practicing, but limited, practicing with the backups. It's going to be a tougher approach against the Green Bay Packers. They got Micah Parsons on the other side. They're not a unbeatable team. They're certainly not the same juggernaut. We saw them lose to the Cleveland Browns earlier this season. But the question is, should Jacoby be the starter for longer? And I think the thing for me is, if you're going to talk about this Cardinals team, I think you come away going, you didn't have a win. You got to see at least a couple of things where there was some better placement. There was a little bit of times where there wasn't as good of placement. You got to see overall it was a solid performance from Jacoby that made me want more.
Yeah, well, that's going to be the tough question because it's already been said that if Kyler Murray's like 100% or if he's able to go, he can go. I am kind of interested in trying to see what Kyler Murray does now as a response because
Hmm.
if the aggressiveness can be had in these type of plays and whatnot, and Kyler Murray basically watching his counterpart be able to get aggressive and throw downfield, even like on that fade route to the outside, would that make him more aggressive now? I would give Jacoby Brissett the start. The problem is that I don't know if it's going to be the same type of game. I believe it's probably going to be more contained. It's going to be more like short stuff because the Packers defense, even though the Colts defense is great, the Packers defense is supposed to be up there with the elites and whatnot. And of course, you got that pressure that's going to come up. And we saw Jacoby Brissett take hit after hit, and it's going to be difficult to replicate that type of performance. So if I mean, obviously you're going to give Jacoby the start because of the injury thing, but if Kyler Murray was 100%, I would have been interested in seeing what he was going to do, if he was going to be more aggressive. That's pretty much it for me. Like, hey,
Mm.
are you just going to be more aggressive, or are you going to try to attack more downfield? And if you are, hey, we'll see if you can get yourself a 300-yard game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's halftime here for us with the Redbird Reboot podcast. Let's go over a couple of our comments at least here. You got Silver Wolf AZ kind of commenting and saying, let's go. We got AZ Jace always here in our chat. Love to see it. Ball placement for the playmakers was better with Jacoby. I think it was the aggression of passing the ball downfield to the receivers. We got to see there was a lot more of the play action from dropping back under center and then Jacoby being able to throw the ball, stretching. I do think that the corners being out for the Colts was one factor. Do think also that we saw a couple of times like the back shoulder fades, a couple of other plays. The communication seemed like it was good. Zay Jones, I think, probably had the best game that he's had as a Cardinal as well, stepping up without Marvin Harrison Jr. I have Accelerator saying, I watched a couple of YouTubes on actual Cardinals today. They are more aggressive than I thought. I think that is part of with the Arizona Cardinals, where we're talking a little bit about being more aggressive. We have seen it from the offense with Jacoby Brissett in tow. We did not see it as much from the defense as I would have liked to have seen. Felt like the quick passing game just did not have any Cardinals players who were able to get there. Daniel Jones took only one sack in the game. He was otherwise not holding the ball, was getting rid of it, threw for only 200 yards, but Jonathan Taylor rushed at about 6 yards per carry. That run defense was not able to limit him like we had hoped. So let's talk a little bit with the Cardinals, because Marcos, I'm going to say something here that may be a bit controversial, but I think with the way this Cardinals team is constructed, we can talk about with height, but Jacoby Brissett, it still was one of those things where it's a great performance from him. We'll have to see how it goes against the tougher teams, especially NFC West teams. We saw an improvement in terms of the middle of the field throws that we hadn't seen from Kyler Murray. I think where we're at with this Cardinals team is, I don't know if you're going to say who gives you a better chance of winning. It feels like the way this defense is currently running in the fourth quarter and with these offensive struggles, it's like, would you rather lose with Kyler Murray or lose with Jacoby Brissett? Because after 4 in a row, Marcos, you got to go out there and just be able to get a win. And I'm not sure that this is the team you'll want to do it against in the Green Bay Packers. It's kind of a tough spot to figure out who you want to roll with for the current week and then even for the rest of the season.
Yeah, well, it all goes with like what are your plans from here on out? Because there's been a lot of things have been tossed up as what direction this Cardinals team can go, including going on a fire sale and just like selling all your assets and whatnot, and that includes Buda Baker and Kyler Murray and whatnot. And to just go with a full rebuild, full restart, get yourself your quarterback of the future in this year's draft. I don't think they're gonna do that. I don't think they want that dramatic of a change. I think they just want to see where this direction of this franchise is going. And even if you were to try to trade Kyler Murray, I don't think you're gonna get too much, or at least you're not gonna get much for him in return because of his current status of his injury. And of course, with his play not just being there, they're just not gonna really bite and give you something that's like a high draft pick, not high enough to at least get you as a replacement as a starter. So I. It's hard. It's really hard to say what direction I would want him to go to because I need to see more games and whatnot, and kind of get more of the gist of what's going on in that locker room.
Mm.
But it is kind of tempting to just say fire sale. It's just like, hey, come on, guys, we got to do a reset on this.
Yeah, Cardinals right now, they do have a top 10 draft pick. They're picking 10th in the NFL draft. Right now, at least tankathon.com has them assigned with an edge rusher. I would think at least that, and we can talk a little bit about some of the areas now, that Titans win gets you to 3-3. You're still in it. At 2-4, when you're looking at the rest of the NFC West at 4-2 or 5-1, every other team being a couple games ahead of you, it feels like you're probably going to have to beat the Packers, and you're going to have to probably get pretty close to beating the Cowboys or come out of the bye week and be able to get back to 500 by winning the next 2 games in a row to get back to 4-4. That's a tall task to be able to have, Marcos. I think that what you're talking about with the Cardinals is what we're seeing with this coaching staff with the end of fourth quarter, with the defensive side on offense still having issues, at least with just some of these end of game scenarios. I think that they're going to continue to lose some of these games to teams like the Seahawks and the Niners. The season is pretty much a stick a fork in them. If you get past the Packers and Cowboys, let's say that you get none of those games, you lose both of those games, you'll play the Seahawks, the Niners, and then that will pretty much be it out of your bye week. You would be essentially at that point in line for a top 7, top 5 pick. You'd be in the likes up there with the Dolphins, the Browns, the Jets, the Titans even. All of these teams, at least, that are really, really struggling. Cardinals are one of those teams. So the question ultimately is the Kyler Murray experience over with the Arizona Cardinals? And I think after watching the team, watching what we saw with that offense, knowing that Kyler's height has been an issue, I would say it's inconclusively yes. So not conclusively yes, but inconclusively yes. To me, it makes sense that if you're going to talk about this Cardinals team and how they want to run things moving forward, I think that something has to change. I think either you're going to look at Jonathan Gannon in these late game scenarios and say, that's year 3. You've done more than enough time to be able to develop. This is the year you've got to be winning these close games. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. And I think you need to be able to make a change ultimately, whether that's at the offensive coordinator or whether it's at the head coach himself for how he's running, because Marcos, this is not a good defense in the fourth quarter. This is a defense that is very talented and good, but gives up these leads late in the game and loses in these close game scenarios. It's not good enough. I've seen enough to be able to say we probably need to do a little bit of a reset. I would say let's go ahead, take a look at whatever sort of reset that is. It probably is going to start and end with moving on from Kyler Murray. The question, of course, is do you start Jacoby Brissett next year? Just say if he's the guy moving forward. I think that you're going to have to probably take a look at other quarterback options. And unfortunately, Marcos, for 2026 NFL free agent at quarterback, you're probably going to have to make a trade or you're going to have to do something because it is pretty slim pickings. I'm going to pull this up on the screen for those of you guys who will be able to watch us. Thanks again for tuning in. We're going to take a look at the quarterback position. The number one option, Daniel Jones, who I would not think he's going to leave Indianapolis after the season he is having. I think that he is the kind of guy, unless it ends up being a Sam Darnold, he goes after one season, you're able to sign him to a Sam Darnold type contract. You got Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Marcus Mariota, Zach Wilson, Tyrod Taylor, 42-year-old Joe Flacco, Jimmy Garoppolo. None of these are options that are going to be able to do as a starting caliber quarterback for next year. You'd have to be hoping that a Tua Tagovailoa gets released or cut. You'd have to be hoping Aaron Rodgers has a year left in the tank, or hope you're probably going to be rolling with Jacoby Brissett next year and probably rolling with a draft pick. I think when you're talking about what you can look at with the Kyler Murray experience, I think change is good. We talked a little bit about this last week on the pod. Baker Mayfield moved to a new team. He got a good change from it. You talk about a team like the Indianapolis Colts moved on from Anthony Richardson, who they drafted, to Daniel Jones, and there was a good change. You can even take a look at a team like in the Atlanta Falcons, who had Kirk Cousins. They moved on to Michael Penix. They go out and beat the Bills the last week. So I think when it comes to the NFL, it's a young man's league with change. Kyler Murray's entering year 7. He's probably going to take a team like the Steelers or head to a team like the Jets, who may have the number 1 overall pick, and probably if they do, we're going to draft a rookie quarterback, would seem to make the most amount of sense. So the question then is, if you're going to be making a change, I think it's going to start with Kyler Murray. I think it would end ultimately with Jonathan Gannon and some of this coaching staff being under fire, because offensively, if you get in a new offensive guy and things improve, you're going to say it's the offensive guy is the core of it. The defensive side has not been good enough in these late game situations in year 3. We'd hope that the defense would step up, and instead, Marcos, kind of looks like the same defense from 2023, just with better defensive linemen up front to stop the run. It hasn't turned into a elite game-winning defense. They are 17th in defense, Marcos. 17th. That fourth quarter is weighing on them heavily, and they have not been able to fix it.
No, they haven't, and I think for the most part it has been because they've had to take more snaps on defense because the offense wouldn't have, they would sputter and not move the ball and whatnot.
You would think that, but it's not the case. Cardinals have led in time of possession in every game this year, so that should be a rested defense.
Yeah, that's true.
The way that it's set up for the most part, so you can't even blame that. It's more of, I think, a fact of this is just probably a coaching staff that is not as good as other coaching staffs, and in these fourth quarter situations, they're crumbling. For all the talk of aggression, being aggressive, we did finally get to see an aggressive passing Cardinals attack at the end. We didn't get to see them run the ball, but I said, like, hey, you checked the ball down on third down. Maybe you should have run it on second down. Like, that was one of those takebacks. At the end of the day, they still were aggressive in throwing and had a chance to win the game. That was the sort of aggression we wanted to see. We didn't see it on the defensive end to be able to get that single stop or get that turnover to end the game. Instead, you score a field goal, give up a touchdown. You got to go back and get a touchdown to win the game, and the Cardinals lose for the 4th time in a row. It just feels like this is who they are for the season, as a team that's going to blow these fourth quarter leads and not be able to capitalize. And I don't know if that's sustainable with the schedule that the Cardinals have. They play the Packers. The Cowboys are getting CD Lamb back, plus some other offensive linemen. So that offense is going to look good. Followed up by the Seahawks and a healthy George Kittle on the 49ers. This season is in jeopardy when you're talking about these upcoming 4 games against other NFC opponents. They don't play an NFC opponent. I believe they play until the Jaguars on November 23rd, the Thanksgiving week, essentially, is the next time that they play a out of division, or I should say, out of conference opponent. We don't want to be sitting here talking about the Cardinals getting a 3rd win potentially against the Jaguars because they go on and lose 8 games in a row. Like, you have to pick up a win. I think it starts this week. You have to be able to pull through against the Packers. And if you can't do it this week, you're going to have to do it on Monday Night Football with probably Kyler Murray back in tow against the Dallas Cowboys. That being said, if Jacoby Brissett plays well against the Packers, Marcos, would you start him after the bye week and continue to roll with Jacoby?
Yeah, I would. If he has another of the same game, and even if they, win the game against the Packers, yeah, I would start him afterwards. If he doesn't look as good as he did in that first game, and, it's kind of shaky, and Kyler Murray was back to, being fully healthy and whatnot after the bye week, of course, you'd want to give Kyler Murray the ball back to see what he would do in response to, all this this offense operating the way it did.
Yeah, I think that's something that's going to be a need, at least for the most part, for the Arizona Cardinals. Let's talk a little bit with the future. So I'm going to add in the tankathon.com. We're going to take a look at this banner here. So right now, as far as draft picks go, right now, the one guy who people seem to love, and this is something I heard that the Cardinals are watching him as well, is Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback at Indiana. He fits the prototype. 6'5", 225 pounds, is having a top year. He's up there for Heisman contention. The guy who's a bit more raw, I don't think he'll declare this year, is Dante Moore. I think it's a little behind. Ruben Bain Jr. from Miami is having probably the best year of any college football player. He, I think, is the leader in the Heisman and is a defensive player. Then there's two tackles are up there as well. Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu are the two tackles at Utah, which for you Arizona State fans, it's in the Big 12 with Utah. Those two guys are super talented. You're going to probably you saw them last week be able to run the ball like crazy on Arizona State. Normally in a regular scenario, Marcos, I would say that would be the pick. You would slot in for Jonah Williams, be able to take off, but we have not seen enough from Kyler Murray to be able to guarantee that he's going to be the quarterback next year. It feels like the change is inevitable. We saw with Jacoby Brissett. Just moving to a taller quarterback, I think, is needed regardless of if the Cardinals keep this current coaching staff or not. We've tried to see them tailor the scheme around Kyler Murray before. I think it's time for a change, and I think that's going to be helpful for everyone. Caleb Downs is another top talented player at safety. Unless the Cardinals decide that they're going to fire sale at the deadline, trade away Budda Baker, I don't see them with what we've seen so far. Now, granted, he was hurt as far as it came to with practice today, but I've seen enough from their 7th round draft pick. I believe, this is where I'm trying to remember the name of him at least. He was injured today. I've got it right here. Keaton Crawford. I've seen enough from Keaton Crawford to know that with the safeties that the Cardinals have, if for some reason they wanted to move on from Budda Baker, I would personally move on from Jalen Thompson instead. I think that he offers a little bit more to teams as far as safety, whereas Budda's very good at what he does. I think that leadership in the locker room is still needed. You want him to be that lifetime Cardinal as best as you can. I've seen enough from Keaton Crawford, at least. I don't think the Cardinals need to look at addressing the safety spot whatsoever. Some people have mentioned that the Cardinals could use a receiver as far as Jordan Tyson is concerned. I think that there's enough wide receivers that are going to be available next year for a number 2. You're talking about Christian Kirk is available. You're looking at Jacoby Myers is going to need to get paid. You're going to have Greg Dortch's contract is up. Maybe you think you can get an extra year or so out of a guy like an Elijah Moore. Zay Jones himself could come back on another deal. You might want to invest a little younger at like a Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a little bit smaller but has been pretty productive overall. Alec Pierce as well is another guy that you could line up that we got to see him make a couple of big catches as well. There's plenty of options, I think, for a wide receiver too, who's a veteran, that I'm not too concerned. What there isn't is quarterbacks. There's a couple of quarterbacks in this draft that are after the guys who are the top 2 with Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza. One of those is Lenoris Sellers, who is at 6'3", 240 pounds. Best way to describe is think of like raw Josh Allen, not good Josh Allen, and raw Anthony Richardson. He's kind of in that mold as far as 6'3", 240, super athletic, but very raw. You kind of don't know which guy he's going to draft or develop into. You could end up being a total bust, could end up being a stud. The other guy that I think we've seen a little bit that seems to be this quarterback 2 or 3 is Ty Simpson, the quarterback at Alabama. He's a little on the skinnier side, 208, but he's got athleticism. He's got a 16-1 touchdown interception ratio. Garrett Nussmeier is the guy who he's running a pro style offense. I've compared him to Jimmy Garoppolo as another guy. He's had a couple more turnovers this year. Will kind of do a dumb sort of throw every once in a while. He's 6'1", 205. So essentially, this isn't a bad quarterback class. It doesn't have the star power potentially of, say, an Arch Manning. It doesn't have the star power, at least, of what we probably had hoped this NFL class was going to be, with the likes of even a Arizona State Sun Devil. Sam Leavitt hasn't turned out to be quite the same as what we had hoped for. John Mateer is another name at 224 pounds. He really struggled against Texas's defense for the most part. His development seems like he's kind of that gunslinger mentality. Like he'll be able to run around, throw the ball deep, make some plays happen. 2 guys who've seen their draft stock fall. Nico Iamaleva is the guy who essentially looks the closest to being a guy that you'll find in a year or 2 is probably the number 1 overall pick. He reminds me a lot of Jared Goff coming out of Cal a few years ago, but this is out of UCLA. Left-handed quarterback, so you kind of get some Michael Penix comps. All of this, at least to say, is if the Cardinals are going to want to move on from Kyler Murray, Marcos, I think that there's 2 options that you can look at. One is the positive, saying, yes, there's guys they could move on to. Then there's the negative. Are you really going to be moving to a guy who's more talented than Kyler or is going to be able to win you games right away? Odds are probably not. What we've seen also is a lot of times you get a highly touted quarterback class, and a lot of times you get busts, especially if it's a guy who's picked outside of the top 3 picks. A lot of times those guys can end up being sometimes a dime a dozen in the NFL. Other times you get a guy who's super valuable. I think it's one of those places where when it comes to change, you at least still have to try, but it's one of those spots where I don't know if I trust this current staff to be able to draft, develop, mold that quarterback. It feels like this current staff, you could go out there, be competitive with a Jacoby Brissett the same way they went out there and were at least somewhat competitive a couple years ago in 2023 when they had to have a backup running out there. I just really don't feel like that this coaching staff has shown me enough in 3 years. Say that they should be in charge of getting a 2 to 3 year window to draft, develop, and start another quarterback. And I don't know if I trust this Cardinals team if they're bad and you fire Jonathan Gannon. Suddenly, it's another scenario of a quarterback that your head coach didn't draft. You have to come in and make it work with that guy. It's not someone that he picked. He just kind of inherits. I would rather have a fresh, clean slate if this is the direction the Cardinals go. And they do have time to turn it around, Marcos, with their schedule. If the Cardinals can beat one of the Packers or the um, Cowboys, I should say, the
Mhm.
way that their schedule lines up, they're going to be able to have some division games. You can get back into the division, get back to 2-2 by beating the Niners, beating the Seahawks. We're just seeing if this team is struggling, can't beat the Colts, struggling against uh, a bad, Tennessee Titans team. It just feels like this is a bad Cardinals team overall this year. They're going to get back Walter Nolan. They've gotten healthier on the offensive line. They'll get back Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr., but it doesn't feel like it's enough for this team. They're just not good enough to go out and win games. And when they are in position, we've seen the coaching staff kind of cave and turtle a little bit at the end. And I think that is ultimately the biggest story of the Cardinals this season is that you've got a roster and a team that does not have a coaching staff that knows how to win close games in the NFL.
No, absolutely not, and it sucks because I heard that the combined points is that the Cardinals have lost where they could be 6-0 right now at this moment is nine
Or
points.
0-6
Right.
at least too, with how it's worked. It could flip the other
Yeah,
way.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
Jonathan Gannon at least has a losing record as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. He's 14-25 in 2 seasons. Um, you're talking at least about overall with the 14-26 now after the Arizona Cardinals have lost. That means that the Cardinals with Jonathan Gannon are winning 1 out of every 3 games that they play. They're losing. Last year was most of where those wins were considered. Unfortunately, they went 8-9, lost down the stretch of the season. They've got a tough finish against the Bengals if they get Joe Burrow back. Who Bengals actually have looked pretty good with Joe Flacco in there with
hmm,
Jamar Chase, and
hey,
finishing up against the Rams. The Falcons went off and beat the Bills, and then the Texans, of course, have one of the top defenses in the
yeah,
NFL. I think if I had to be perfectly honest, Marcos, I'm taking a look at this and saying, you know what? I'm hitting the reset button if I'm Michael Bidwell on this coaching staff. I'm going to go out there, get an offensive guy, bring in one of the guys, like whether it's Joe Brady or one of those other offensive guys. Go out there, trade Kyler Murray away. We'll talk a little bit next week probably about what could that value be. How does Jacoby do? Does he fall on his face against the Packers? Does he put up another impressive showing? Do you kind of get the feeling that he could be a starting caliber quarterback for next year? Or are you going to hit the reset button there too? I think you hit the reset button, bring in a guy who can develop a quarterback with a quarterback. I think it's going to be the hard sell for Michael Bidwell to get that sort of a coach in here, but I think you ultimately have to try and recognize that once you're back to a rookie quarterback contract with the pieces that you've got in place on defense that are young, with some of these pieces on offense, I think you're going to be in a good scenario to be able to go out there and maybe not finish in first, but can you take advantage of a team that gets injured like the Rams with Stafford? Does he stay healthy again? Do the Seahawks keep things going with Sam Darnold and that defense for the most part? Do the Niners kind of have another injury-prone drop-off that pops up? Could you get into third in the division and then potentially swing way for the Cardinals by 2027 to come back to relevancy? Because, Marcos, this is supposed to be the year the Cardinals had relevancy. That's the most disappointing part of this
yeah,
season. It's supposed to be this year. Instead, you're finding yourself more and more irrelevant every single week, and that is frustrating.
yeah. That is frustrating. This was supposed to be the third year of the rebuild. We're supposed to go to the playoffs. They went aggressive when it came to free agency on the defensive side, and of course they drafted mostly all defensive players in this draft. So they thought to themselves, okay, this offense is good, it's fine. We got the playmakers in place, we got the line, we got the running backs and whatnot, and then the defense needed all the help that they can get, and they did get all those reinforcements, and it's still being in a situation where now we're looking at like we're gonna have to hit the reset, and it's only been 6 games in.
It's unfortunate. Cardinals can change all of their reset expectations, but they got to do it with a win against the Green Bay Packers. That's going to be a tall, tough task. Fortunately, they get to do it at home. That's going to be it for our show here today. This has been the Redbird Reboot podcast. We're talking about, do the Cardinals need to continue to reboot? We did get to see their offense get rebooted with Jacoby Brissett this next week. We'll see if he's starting for yet another week. The Packers, when that team played the Cardinals in 2021 and you had the AJ Green no look, no turnaround, kind of wrecked their season. Is this upcoming game going to wreck the Cardinals season, or could we end up seeing it be where the Cardinals go out, beat the Green Bay Packers? Suddenly you start to see that ray of hope that comes back, undoing some of the mystery of the curse that hit that Cardinals team after that year. I guess we'll have to see and find out. But in the meantime, guys, it's the end of our show, which means it's time for us to shut down for now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, you can find me on X/Twitter at BlakeMurphy7. And Marcos, you can go ahead and shout out for where they can find you, your content, especially your video content, since you are putting up some great video clips out there for the
Yeah,
people.
yeah, just on X/Twitter. Of course, I have my handle at Pancake Soul. You'll be able to see the clips that I post up and whatnot. It's a lot of just all 22 and me breaking them down.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm super excited to see. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Redbird Reboot, now logging off.